Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here with you today. I am grateful for the invitation. I did tell Roberta that I'd be happy to speak at any point of the conference except right after President Mark Tessier. As is the case probably for many of you who have kids that are still in school, my kids can be affectionate but also harsh critics. If they knew I was speaking today, they'd point out that I'm neither a medical doctor nor a computer scientist. I tell them they underestimate the value of being a doctor in political science, since revolutions are not unlike inflammation. And lawyers, of course, can produce plenty of inflammation as well. But they're a tough crowd. They don't buy that. And they have a point. In some ways, I come to these fascinating discussions you've been having as an outsider, and I come, therefore, with a lot of humility. But also, in some respects, I'd like to think that my experience is at least a little bit relevant. I was fascinated by artificial intelligence and especially applications of AI to computer vision when I was in college. As a young public official at the Treasury in the late 90s, I did my best to help the agency make better use of its data, to spot patterns of corruption and money laundering while still taking seriously the public's rights and privacy. In the Obama White House, I was one of the point people on FDA policy issues who negotiated laws dealing with food safety and tobacco regulation. As a judge, I've had to decide dozens of cases involving healthcare and data, and healthcare and data. And as a scholar, lately I've spent much of my time writing about how law and artificial intelligence are affecting each other and eventually ourselves. So against this backdrop, I want to make 3 points. First, as many of you know, the current healthcare system is stubbornly still largely a sick care system, where people are compensated for providing care for those who are sick, and the connection between existing incentives and getting patients and the general public to be better, to be healthier, is tenuous at best. Obviously, the American healthcare system is extraordinarily valuable in many of its qualities, from its capacity to deal with emergency room trauma, to biomedical innovation, to the extraordinary qualities of elaborate high-end surgery. But it's not a safe assumption to presume that the existing system works especially well in key respects. And this realization should inform how we think about the role of artificial intelligence in the medical sector. AI has the potential to make care both better and worse. It also has the potential to make care more affordable and replace labor for many functions related to care and delivery administration. Therefore, at a minimum, we should recognize that AI technology capable of contributing dramatically to improvements in health will also be revenue destructive in some ways, and in that respect, may trigger a backlash from key players in the healthcare system. This will make the adoption of AI uneven, painful, and in some cases risky, even if it has positive benefits for some patients and adopters. It could also trigger quite a backlash. Second, although judges and doctors are different in many respects, there are also similarities. The public expects us to perform a role, to inspire confidence, to care about each case, to make an impersonal system somewhat more human. Ideally, we want to have tacit knowledge we carry around, compared to at least how some machine learning techniques perform. Experienced doctors and judges can plausibly claim to be in a position to make sense of what specific problems among a mass of multiple problematic connections and conditions matter most. Humans are also prone to a measure of irrationality, hubris, and other faults, as you've discussed. To make the most of what experienced key human decision makers can leverage while using AI and other techniques to limit these faults is a very worthy goal. But we should proceed with care. We should recognize how the organizational structures and legal arrangements around us, in which we do most of our work, also help constrain our faults by forcing deliberation, explanation, and justification. Deep learning and other techniques that increasingly are at the heart of the AI revolution offer often little insight into why a decision is made. And although these techniques leverage an architecture not dissimilar to that of the human brain in some respects, we have yet to set up a system where these technologies are fully compatible with the mechanisms we've created around us for explanation, justification, and conversation. To my mind, this is more than just a matter of creating the right user interface to provide so-called explainability. we should carefully consider how organizations develop expertise in their members, how we make policy decisions through conversation, whether user interfaces are adequately representing what's driving an AI recommendation, and how reliance on AI may affect all the subtle ways in which organizations gather information about the people they're supposed to serve. We also need to avoid too much reliance on machines simply because there's so much we don't know about disease and biology. And having a machine force a patient into an existing model may hide an opportunity to better understand disease variations. The genetic revolution is helping us realize the many subtypes of disease. And it will take time for AI data streams to capture these new insights and nuances. This last point raises to me one of the most important issues. As best I can tell, we're still far from a technological frontier where machines can actually care about the patients that they have, or even give a convincing illusion that they do. If AI can free doctors to do less paperwork and more of the caring that they can uniquely do, then there's good reason to think that this will not only improve satisfaction, but probably improve outcomes as well. But it's difficult to defend a state of the world where AI simply makes it easier for organizations to even more pointedly ignore patients with less power and money, or where diminished privacy lets medical information be leveraged to make it easier to sell products or services to people when they don't really need them, or where we end up with highly automated dispensation of medical care for most people while human attention becomes more concentrated on the rich and the powerful. Third, as most of you know, and as some of you have been discussing today, the healthcare system is filled with inequity in terms of money, power, race, geography, gender, and other characteristics. Much of our most promising AI technology is built on data. Data that almost inevitably, without great care, ends up reflecting those inequities. And also, in the case of electronic health records, arguably includes plenty of inaccurate or even fraudulent information. Lack of care in building the medical infrastructure of AI to deal with this data risks replicating these inequities and inaccuracies with unfortunate consequences for the public and even greater risk of intense legal and policy disputes. None of this is to say that AI doesn't have promise in making medical care more widely available at a higher than current quality to more people. But simply assuming that some version of AI is currently conceived or in likely future forms will make everything better is not a good roadmap. If we train the machines only on the data that we have today, we will end up with machines that deepen the inequities of our system. We need to take added care to augment our data, to mitigate these biases, to create a more equitable healthcare system. We also need to take greater precautions, not to use predictive models in discriminatory ways, since our forecasting ability for a person's health, healthcare costs, disease, and disability will dramatically improve in the coming years. I hope these observations emphasize the value of the conversation today. The hard work ahead can yield a more accurate and equitable medical system consistent with the values built into our civic life and our legal system, but only by taking seriously the inequities in existing institutions and being aware of how innovation can be used either to exacerbate or alleviate those inequities can we make reasonable progress in answering the questions of privacy, integrity, accuracy, and dignity that will help us build a better system for our children's generation. Thank you.
The preceding program is copyrighted by the Board of Trustees of the Leland Stanford Junior University. Please visit us at med.stanford.edu.